Good morning, everybody, and welcome. I am Pastor Guy, and this is Pastor's Corner. For those of you who are new to the corner, I'm Guy Watley, and welcome to my corner of the internet. It's a place where we get together once a week to encourage the believer on how to be in the world, but not of the world. If you like what you hear, follow us on Facebook. I encourage you to go over to YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube page, our YouTube channel. We like to get the word out. You can also find us Sunday mornings at 10:30. We live stream our Sunday morning services. We were having some technology growing pains, you might say, on our live stream, but we're working on it and trying to do better with what we have. But all these things take time and cost money, so we're doing our best. But we're glad you're here, and hopefully we can encourage you today. I was reminded this past week, we're all familiar with, well, maybe, hopefully we are, the story of Samson. In Scripture, in the book of Judges, Samson and Delilah. And it's an interesting thing about Samson because, many of our biblical heroes, as it were, whether it's David and Goliath, right? Daniel, the fiery furnace, Daniel in the lion's den, and then his Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace, and Noah, Moses. I don't know. There's several that are childhood stories we look at and we're excited about them. And Samson and Delilah is one. But the thing about Samson, he's not unique when it comes to men. I guess I say that because they were all sinners. David was a murderer. They all had their foibles, their weaknesses. Daniel, I guess maybe Daniel stood head and shoulders above the others in his righteousness, but Samson was not a good guy. You read through those couple of chapters of the accounts of his life, and he was a very selfish individual. He was an Adonis. He was strong, muscular, beautiful. He had a ton going for him. He was bright, but he was very selfish. And yet, as we go through that account, sometimes we gloss over that. We don't think about it. But the reality is, even unto his death, he was more about him, more about his avenging what had happened to him, rather than seeking to glorify God. But in spite of all that, God still used him. God used him through and with his sin to bring about the salvation of Israel and destroying the Philistines and bringing himself glory. And so when, I was thinking about that, and just thinking about how God in his sovereignty works, in his providence works. And it was pointed out that, it's not surprising he uses men who are sinners, men and women who are sinners, because that's all he's got to work with. That's what we are. And he has chosen to use us. He knew going in what he was up against and the fact that we are sinful people and our hearts are deeply so, and who can trust them, right? And so it's not a surprise that he uses sinners. What's amazing is that through our sin, he uses us to bring glory to his kingdom and to himself. Along in the midst of our sin, like Samson, a character like him, and you can go back through and read it, read that account in Judges, and kind of look at it from a perspective of selfishness, and see Samson's sin is ever right before us, but God's program is moving along, churning right alongside of Samson's sin, and God's going to use it. He's going to use Samson and his sinful heart to bring glory and to save Israel. So anyway, that's kind of an aside, but looking at our world and looking at our current state of affairs, the protesting all over college campuses, mostly organized. The more we hear about it, and if you're not, if you're just watching NBC News or something, you might not be hearing about it, but most of these college campus protests have a core group of paid people who are of paid young adults or whatever, through George Soros, being paid to propagate this, to get it going, to keep it alive, to keep it there. And then you just have the sheep of the kids on college campuses going along. Without much struggle, you can pull up videos of interviews of kids who are there where the interviewer asks, "Why are you protesting?" And they have no idea. Something about Israel or, about Palestine. They don't know. They're just there. And that's kind of typical of the human condition. And so we see that in there. But it reminded me and brought me around to the reality that how's this tie in with Samson? It ties in because of God's providence, that you and I sitting at home could be totally filled with anxiety and worry about the events of the world and the things that are going on, or we can rest joyfully in the Lord. How does one rest joyfully right now with the state of affairs, with inflation and prices, gas prices are going back up? I mean, they go up 20 cents a day around here, and then they drop back down for a couple of days, and they're back up again. And it's crazy. It's crazy town. And prices at the grocery store are all over the map, and but high, all over the map. It's still high. And you say, so what is there to be joyful in, Guy? And I said, well, joyful, the opposite of joy is not sad or unhappy. The opposite of joy is hopelessness. And for Christians, we should be filled with the hope of glory, with the hope of a God who is providential, a hope of a God who is sovereign over all of his creation. And, the human condition, it did not just wake up 20 years ago to be evil. Our world has been evil from the beginning. God killed 1 billion people. He judged them and wiped them out when he brought a flood upon the earth and left 8 of all the earth, 8 people lived. God brought them through. So, and he didn't do it because the world was a good place, because man's heart was glad and was joyful. No, they were evil and not good and unrighteous. And so, what we're seeing going on in the world is nothing new. This hate for Israel, it shouldn't shock anybody who's ever picked up a Bible. I mean, it's replete from the beginning to the end that the Jews are going to be a central piece of and focus of the world's hate. And that's exactly what's going on today. And it's just amazing to me as people slowly wake up to this reality. And it's just because we don't read the Bible, even Christians. But back to my point. Joy. Joy in times such as these. And the reason that we as Christians can have joy and can rest assuredly in God's grace and mercy is because he is sovereign. In fact, his plan includes, as it was prayed this morning at men's prayer breakfast, it's Tuesday, I'm recording this early, at men's prayer breakfast, God doesn't have a plan B. God's got a plan, period, and he will bring it to fruition. And that should bring you joy. If nothing else does, that should bring you joy. Knowing that in spite of everything we see around us, God is providential and sovereign over his creation and over his church and over his world and his plan. One plan, plan A. And it will all come to culmination in the fullness of time. And that should bring joy to your heart. I'm Pastor Guy, and this has been Pastor's Corner. I hope you have a wonderful day in the Lord today, and that you find joy in knowing that the war has been won. The battle and the skirmishes go on, but the war is over, and our God reigns. You take care, and I will see you next week or Sunday at 10:30. Lord willing, have a wonderful, blessed day.